welcome to today's episode of Authentic Achievements, where it's my absolute delight to be joined by the fabulous Yosi Amram, Ph.D. Yosi, welcome.
Thank you, Kim. I'm delighted to be here with you, and thank you for the warm welcome.
Oh, I'm so looking forward to this conversation. And I know from our pre-conversations that we can very quickly get stuck into a full-on conversation. So before we do that, let me just share with the audience listening and watching just a little bit more about you. So Yosi is a licensed clinical psychologist, a CEO leadership coach, and a best-selling and award-winning author. Previously the founder and CEO of 2 companies, he led through successful IPOs. Yosi has coached over 100 CEOs, many of whom have built companies with thousands of employees and revenues in the billions. With engineering degrees from MIT and an MBA from Harvard, as well as his PhD in psychology from Sophia University, he's a pioneering researcher in the field of spiritual intelligence, whose research has received over 1,000 citations, and as an Amazon best-selling author of the Nautilus Book Award gold medal winning Spiritual Intelligent Leadership, How to Inspire by Being Inspired. I mean, where to start? There's so many questions that I would like to delve into, but could you start by kind of bringing that journey to life for us, please?
Yeah, as you could tell, I've gone through many lifetimes. But I'll try and condense my 3.5 years of life in 3.5 minutes. No, it's a lot more than 3.5 years. But joking aside, I was born and raised in Israel, which is a war-torn part of the world, and was drafted into the military at age 18, like all young men do, despite my pacifistic leanings and despite my being sort of more of a math and science nerd and introverted, shy kid. I was thrown into leadership positions, and to my surprise, I received all these leadership awards and had the fastest promotion record in the history of my regiment. So even though I excelled in that environment, and fortunately it was a peaceful time, not like now, which is horrific, but the military command and control model, which was necessary in battle, really chafed at my soul. And that kind of led to my lifelong aspiration, or at least one of them, to build an organization and lead people based on more humanistic values that support and grow their unique individuality. And that led me to the starting of my first company, which was appropriately, so to speak, called Individual. And the name stood for the fact that we were the first company to offer personalized newspapers. So you would get Kim's Morning News on your fax machine every day. I don't know how many people remember the days of fax machines. This is the late 80s, early 90s. And our software would learn about your interests and would scan the wire services and so on to deliver a personal interactive newspaper. And Individual also stood for this organizational philosophy that supports each individual in their unique development and growth in a community, in a team environment. So I was very passionate about the company. It reflected my lifelong dream and aspiration. I was working 70, 80 hours a week. I was burning out. And then the internet also came, and it was clear that all the information we were selling on a subscription basis was going to become available for free, ad-supported like it is today. So that was a big threat. And it was also a big opportunity, but I kind of really froze down with fear and got depressed and really couldn't face my employees and tell them how we're going to navigate in this new world and migrate our fax business. So I got depressed and so on, but I persisted, and we eventually figured out an internet strategy that was successful, and the company went public, and our stock price was rising, and I was a star, so to speak, in that world. And one day I was trying to relax. It was a very hectic time, and I was getting a deep tissue massage. And while I was lying on the table, relaxing, I had the experience that my body was made of consciousness, and there wasn't any separation. Everything was really part of this one field. And the floor that I looked through, the cradle, looked like it was part of me. And I felt like everything is interconnected. We're all one at some level. And that kind of blew the circuits of my mind and threw me into this manic episode, and which led to me being pushed out of the company, which was very traumatic and difficult because the company was my baby and I was shamed. And there were all these articles in the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, how I was emotionally unstable. And that was very disturbing. And a lot of people stopped returning my calls, etc. So that was tragic and painful. But at the same time, it was a hidden blessing because it changed the direction of my life. And it got me to ask these deep questions. Why was I so identified with the business where my identity and self-worth was so tied to it? And were these spiritual experiences real, or were they delusional? And that's what led me to ultimately go back and study clinical psychology, a particular branch called transpersonal psychology that integrates spirituality with psychology. And that's where I started to learn about the concept of spiritual intelligence, which was coined by a woman called Dana Zohar, but it wasn't really defined, it wasn't operationalized or measured. And that's what got me to define it and measure it, and then show that leaders that have higher spiritual intelligence indeed are more effective. They lead teams that have greater morale, higher commitment, lower turnover, and then follow-on research since has shown that they produce better financial results for their organizations, and there are many other benefits to spiritual intelligence. So these days, my passion and my calling and my mission is to awaken greater spiritual intelligence in myself and in the world. And I think that this is a critical time for us to do that, given the unique time humanity is facing. But I'll pause there. That's kind of took me more than 3.5 minutes to summarize my 3.5 years.
There was a lot to pack in there, though, wasn't there? I mean, that's quite a lot of iterations of your journey, because in each one of those you had to iterate, didn't you, from the changes in the organization, the changes in the external environment, the changes in the way you perceived yourself. And I think sometimes, I'd love your thoughts on this, one of the things that life's taught me is often it only really makes sense in the rearview mirror. It's only when we look back and we're like, oh, right. Yeah. That now makes sense. That's why that bit and that bit had to come together. When we're in it, it can feel overwhelming and out of control. Does that resonate?
Totally. Yeah. So we can only see the thread of our life in the rear view mirror, as you said, and can only make sense of it. So, nowadays you could say everything I'm doing is really built on all these pieces of leadership and my company and my spiritual emergency and my awakening experience. So all of that makes sense in the context of what I'm doing now, and my ability to coach CEOs and do therapy with them and so on, and work with them at all these levels, psychologically, spiritually, and leadership development wise, draws on all these experiences. But there's no way I could have foreseen and say, well, this is going to be my path. I'm first going to do this and then that and then that, but it all makes sense in hindsight.
I think that's so true. So for the people listening and watching that might not have heard the term spiritual intelligence, what is it?
Okay, well, it's a great question. So most of us hopefully have heard of the term emotional intelligence. So emotional intelligence is the ability to draw on emotional resources and information to help manage emotions in ourselves and others. So spiritual intelligence, by analogy, is the ability to draw on spiritual resources and embody spiritual qualities in daily life to enhance functioning and well-being. And so what are these qualities, you might say, that you call spiritual qualities and resources? So these would be things like purpose, service, gratitude, integrity, humility, trust, intuition. These are qualities that are universal across all the world's traditions for thousands of years. So for my doctoral research, when I was trying to really define it, I interviewed 71 teachers, spiritual teachers and leaders that were nominated by their peers as people that embody their spirituality. And regardless of their theology and cosmology, whether they were Buddhist or Hindu or Christian or Muslim or Jewish or shamanic, they talked about these qualities that are virtues. And so the ability to embody those is what spiritual intelligence is. So it's distinct from two things to not be confused with. One is spiritual belief or religious belief. So I may believe in God, I may believe in reincarnation of the soul, I may believe in whatever I believe, or I may have a spiritual experience. I'd be meditating, I'm walking in the forest and I feel my ego dissolves, I'm one with nature, I'm one with whatever. Then that would be a spiritual experience. But what spiritual intelligence cares about is not the belief or the experience, but how do you embody your realizations in daily life? How do I behave in my team meetings at work? How do I behave with my family? How do I behave when I'm driving on the highway in my car and trying to get on or off the freeway? What do I do when I'm in the supermarket in line? So it's like, how do we embody these qualities and these virtues in daily life is what spiritual intelligence is. And the reason we call it intelligence is that when you do that, you do function better individually and collectively. And I could talk a lot more about the research. I mentioned the leadership benefits, but people with higher spiritual intelligence have better quality of life, better satisfaction with life, better mental health, better resilience, higher productivity individually and at the group level. So there are many benefits of spiritual intelligence that have now been researched and documented scientifically.
Amazing. And it sounds to me, Yosi, like actually one of the things when we're being spiritually intelligent is that we are being intentional. We are thinking about how we behave, how we show up, how we appear in certain situations. Like to your point, how are we being in the car on the way to, on the school run, or how are we being in the queue at the supermarket, or how are we showing up with our team? So would it be right to say when we are actively practicing spiritual intelligence that actually we are being intentional and present?
Yeah, so you're hitting on a couple of the qualities of spiritual intelligence, which are intention and presence. So, yeah, so those are important. But, intention is like our North Star. And, we got to be intentional. So it all starts with intention, even awakening spiritual intelligence. People say, well, how do you often ask me, well, okay, sounds great. How do I develop my spiritual intelligence? I say, well, you start with an intention. So the intention is I want to, develop my spiritual intelligence. Okay, that's step one. And then, okay, which quality of spiritual intelligence do I want to develop? So there's 22 qualities. Just like in IQ, there's verbal intelligence, comprehension, mathematical, spatial reasoning. IQ is not, we call it one number, but it's really consists of many qualities. Or just like physical health, you go to the gym, you exercise, you have different muscle groups, so you got to work on different muscles. And so same with spiritual intelligence. So you can work on your purpose, you can work on your gratitude, you can work on your presence, you can work on your intuition. So for each of those, you have to set an intention and say, for this next month, I'm going to work on my gratitude and I'm going to develop a gratitude practice. And then I go through my day with the intention to notice things that I can appreciate and feel grateful for. Anyway, I went off the side a little bit, but I'm highlighting the importance of intention and coming back to our intention to start the journey and to stay on the path.
I love that. And I guess it is, to your point, is picking each of those and then working out a practice that we can make part of our everyday. I love the whole gratitude piece. Smiling, me and my little girl, we do a daily gratitude piece and have done for a couple of years. And not only is it a beautiful thing to do for the two of us, actually it makes you suddenly spot more and more things to be grateful for. And I guess that's that for me has been one of the things, as I become more intentional about what it is I'm focusing on, there's more things to focus on because you perhaps are more aware of them. Is that why we see more of them?
Well, yeah, you start, I mean, this is known in science, whatever you measure tends to increase. I mean, they've studied it in factory assembly line. If you start measuring something, if you get an eye watch and you start monitoring your steps, then you're going to start going through more steps a day, and you're going to say, oh, today I only walked 8,000 steps. I want to make sure I get to my 10,000 steps. So you start paying attention to whatever as you start monitoring it. So if your intention is to practice gratitude, either at the beginning of the end of the day or the end of the day, and then you start saying, okay, you go through a moment, you say, oh, I'm feeling good right now. Let me remember. So tonight when I go to bed and I do my gratitude practice, or at the dinner table with my family, I'm going to remember this moment. So all of a sudden now you're more conscious of your gratitude in the moment, which deepens it. So that becomes a self-reinforcing thing. I'm going to remember more at the end of the day about all the moments I appreciated. And then as I go through my day, I am more living in gratitude, which opens my heart and calms my nervous system, calms my mind. I can think more clearly, and, reduces the, the stress hormones in my body, and instead puts more oxytocin, which is the love drug or the trust drug that connects us with people, makes us feel good, instead of adrenaline and all the other stress hormones that we run through. So
it's amazing how much more we can do when we come at things from a center of calm, isn't it? I think sometimes when we feel that things start to run away with us, and you've talked earlier in today's show about feeling burnt out at certain points, feeling like actually almost you're running on empty because we're not taking those moments of self-care, of refilling the cup, of making sure that actually we're doing for ourselves what we need to enable us to do for others what we need. And is that something you see a lot in other leaders, that need really to be able to practice intentional self-care to enable them to really transcend to be the best leader that they can be?
Totally. I mean, so when you think about what is my job as a leader, the core job of a leader is to inspire, to set the vision. So one of my first Harvard Business School classes was, managers and leaders, are they the same or different? So managers are important. They make decisions, they control scarce resources, etc. But leaders inspire. And what is the root word of inspire? It's spirit. It's the animating breath of life, the life force. The leaders breathe life, passion, purpose into their organization, and it really has to do with the energy that we put out there. I mean, we've all worked in organizations, and when we're like kids looking at the leader, how are they feeling today? Are they happy? Are they worried? What does that mean? Everybody's tuning into the mood of the leader. If the leader is down and looks burnt out and tired and not enthusiastic, not passionate, then everybody in the organization is going to be worried, etc. So our effectiveness as leaders has to do with how inspired we are, which is why the subtitle of my book is How to Inspire by Being Inspired. But the point is that if we're depleted and we're running on empty, we're running on fumes, we're down, then we're not vibrating, we're not vibrant, and that doesn't inspire people around us. So our self-care, to make sure that our frequency, our vibration, if we're to use that kind of language, we feel our passion, our zest, our aliveness, and people are drawn to that. And that's what makes us more enthusiastic, more charismatic, and more powerful.
I love that. It so reminds me of a time many years ago when I was running a big sales team in the UK, and I held 85% of the UK target. So if I missed my number, we all missed our number. And you could not be anything other than ecstatically happy all the time. Otherwise, the entire organization was on tenterhooks. And you'd be like, walk through, if I'd like having a bad day, and they'd be like, what's wrong? And be off the number. I'm like, no, I just fell out with my husband the way in. It's like, there's nothing at all to do with it. And so you very quickly, I learned that actually I had to be really intentional about how I was being when I was within the walls of that organization, because everyone was watching for that prompt, for that sense of, is this good, or is this something that we should be
worried about?
About, you know,
are we behind plan? Are we, what's going on? Are we going to make the month or the quarter? Are we going to get our bonuses or not? You're carrying the sales thing. So, but I just want to highlight one of the things. So we have to put out this energy of positivity, but ideally we could do that in an authentic way, as opposed to just putting on a face that's cheerful, because then that burns us out on the inside if we're being fake, because we have to project a positive image. So that's why actually taking care of ourselves so we can be genuinely positive, authentically, vibrant and optimistic and trusting and hopeful is so crucial. Because otherwise we burn ourselves out, because our inside and our outside are not matched, and that hurts our integrity, and then in the long run it weighs on us to kind of not be authentic.
Well, that's it. I think we have to bring our whole selves. And I guess for me, in those moments, what I realized was I just had to be more present. So not to make things up, not to pretend things were great, but to acknowledge the fact that if I'm having a bad time about something that's not work, I needed to try and do my best to portion off when I would think about that, which is easier said than done, because we know that our emotional brain responds 24 times faster than our thinking brain. So you would have those moments where all of a sudden it'd creep in and you'd be like, no, I will come back for you. I'm not forgetting you. I'm not being
exactly.
But what I am doing is being intentional in the fact that right now that's not the thing I need to be thinking about, because it's not going to help what's going on right here. And I guess for me it's been a bit of a journey, as I think we all have that journey, don't we, where we learn things as we go along, and you're like, okay, that's okay. It's okay to learn as we go, to make those mistakes, to recognize that sometimes our intention and our impact aren't the same. That doesn't mean to say we didn't intend to get it right, but we may be off kilter. What we did might not actually align with what we were trying to do. And if we're present in the moment, we can spot that. We can go, oh, that landed really badly, didn't it? Because that isn't what I was intending to do, but I can see that is my impact. I can see that has gone in a different way. And I think it's more about being open to those conversations, isn't it?
Yeah, and getting back on track, it has to do with the intention. I mean, one thing I like to tell my clients is the story and about mistakes, etc. So there was a famous movie a long time ago, High on a Wire, about this person who walked on the high wire between the Twin Towers and the World Trade Center before they were bombed. They were like at 100 stories high. But if you watch them, they walked between one building and another. Incredible. I mean, I would half a second and I'd be splashed on the floor, right? But if you watch them, they were always out of balance a little bit. But the difference between them and me is, I'd be crashed down before I catch that but they were coming back. So we're always getting off balance and back to balance. So, the practice, and it has to do with what you're talking about, the intention is like catching ourselves and quicker than, so we fall off the horse, we get on the horse. And the faster and the more trained we are, the more we're able to sustain that. But that's how it works. We don't need to be perfect. We just need to be able to get back on track. And that's how meditation works, right? If you meditate, you say, okay, I'm going to focus on my breath and the belly or whatever, and invariably our mind wanders off. And then And then you're like, okay, well, let's see if I can bring it up back gently without attacking myself, without making myself bad or wrong, because that dissipates my energy and it's just a waste of mental energy and time. So it's okay to make mistakes, so to speak, get off track, but get back on track. And it's as we do that, we train ourselves. And, that helps us be present in a meeting. I walk into a meeting, I know what my intention is. I might be to build rapport with this client, to understand their requirements. Okay. So, all of a sudden I'm telling a story, they're telling a story, and our ADHD mindset with all the distraction, I forget what I'm here for. And then I leave the meeting, I didn't ask these crucial questions that I needed to ask in order to qualify them to know if it's a good, I'm just talking about a consultative sales scenario because you come from that world. So, but I'm just saying that's an example where our intention drives and keeps us on track of what our intention is in that meeting. It could be to build rapport. It could be to understand the requirements, to understand their environment. It could be to ask for the order, whatever it is, but we have to be cognizant of it, and then we veer off at it, get back to it.
I love that, because I did a lot with helping people learn more about how to manage conflict and how to address that. So one of the key ways I've learned is be really clear what your intention is. So set an intention at the start of the conversation, and my intention is always to be 100% committed to find a solution that works for everyone, which allows you to keep coming back. You fall off the horse and you go, well, it hasn't really worked. That's okay, because remember our intention. So we're going to come back and we're going to look at what could we do that works for everybody. And it just gives you a safe space, doesn't it, to keep refocusing where we're putting our energy, where we're putting our effort, where we're putting our emotional response, because we can't avoid it. But we can channel it, can't we?
Yeah, and as you say, we fall off the horse, get back on. That's how we learn how to ride the horse. I mean, you can't learn how to bike without falling off a few times, and then the more you practice, you fall, you catch yourself faster, you master it. So every time we fall off, make a mistake, is an opportunity to learn and then improve and grow and get better.
I love that. I can't believe where the time's gone, Yosi. It feels like we've only been chatting for 5 minutes, but we are close to time. So you've already shared such great insight. But could I ask you, if you had to go back and give your younger self a piece of advice, what would it be?
Boy, I think the biggest advice would be that the journey is the reward. It's hard to know. I mean, when we're young, we're always, I was very focused on my goals. I had to make so much money. I had to be this and to make my life be meaningful. But really, the journey is the reward. It's a cliche, but it's true. And it's all about learning and growth. And as long as you're learning and growing and enjoying the journey, I think that's what it's about. And it's all going to make sense in hindsight, like you said. But it's hard. It's hard to anybody young to get that. We're so focused on our dreams, and that's beautiful too. So.
I love that. That so resonates, because I spent so long focused on the destination that I forgot to enjoy the journey along the way. And now that I've got a bit older, it's like, yeah, the destination is important, but the journey is the gift. The journey is the bit that I am present in, and I'm learning, and I'm evolving in. So, Yosi, could you share with us how people can get in touch with you, and who do you help?
Well, I have, a website. It's like yosiamram.net. That's my name, just one word, .net. And another one is awakeningsspiritualintelligence.org. So it's a nonprofit I set up to disseminate some of the teachings. We have free events and free assessments of spiritual intelligence. People can get their profile of strengths and opportunities, or for short, it's just Awakening SI. SI stands for Spiritual Intelligence. So awakeningsi.org or Awakening Spiritual Intelligence, one word.org. There's also a YouTube channel with that name, Awakening Spiritual Intelligence. And so I help leaders that are interested in becoming more inspired, more empowered, more connected to themselves and their organizations, to build high performance teams that produce peak performance for themselves and others. So that's one of my passions. The other thing is I help couples that are interested in their relationship as a spiritual practice, as a practice ground for healing and growth and personal transformation. So, I also work with couples, and that's one of my passions, to see how spiritual intelligence shows up in romantic relationships, and to ignite and sustain and deepen our love, which I think is one of the most rewarding journeys on this planet.
Amazing. So for everybody listening and watching, if you didn't get to scribble all of those down, they are in the show notes below. So please do just look in the show notes below, and you will find all of those ways where you can connect with Yosi and see how he might help you, whether that is professionally or personally. Yosi, it's been an absolute delight. Thank you so very much for coming on and sharing your insight and helping us understand more about spiritual intelligence and how we can really hone in on it to help us to be the best version of ourselves.
Thank you, Kim. It's been a delight and a privilege and an honor to be with you.
Bless you. Thank you so much. And for everybody listening and watching, I hope you found it as insightful and inspiring as I have. And until next time, take care.